What's up, everybody? It's your boy Patrick Gap Bunton holding down the Fort 101 MMA clinic here to talk about UFC 288 Sterling versus Cejudo. This is the first solo episode that we're doing. Alex is on his period. It's really bad. So, along with your like and your subscribe, go ahead, send him some chocolates, send him your tampons, and we can get started. In the meantime, enjoy this new intro.
Are you ready? I'm ready. Are you ready? I'm ready. Are you ready? I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, let's get into it. We got UFC 288 Sterling versus Cejudo, the long-awaited comeback for the bantamweight division, headlining this event. In the co-main, we got Bilal Muhammad taking on Gilbert Burns. This is a short notice fight for both of them. Jessica Andrade, the former champion, taking on Yan Xiaonan. We've got Mozar Evloev. I don't have Alex here to pronounce these Russian or European names, but I'll try my best. On short notice, taking on Diego Lopez, who's making his UFC debut this weekend. Crawdon Gracie, another comeback fight, taking on the talented Charles Jourdain. So let's get into it. I'm not going to put a timer up for these picks, but I am going to try to make them nice and concise for you guys. All right. So we got in the main event, Aljamain Sterling. Let me throw up some banners. Aljamain Sterling versus Henry Cejudo. Cejudo, his last fight was almost 3 years ago to the date in May of 2020. Usually that long of a layoff, you kind of think, well, is he going to come back with some ring rust? What was his time off like? You know, how much training was he doing? How active was he? And for most fighters, that's probably going to be a factor. Henry Cejudo, he's not most fighters. You know, he's the only gold medalist in the Olympics that we have in this sport. So right there, he's already a level above most just in that championship set, like mindset. On top of that, you know, he's been actually very active in the game behind the scenes, you know, not just on social media, but behind the scenes, being a part of these championship camps, you know, John Jones, uh, Mighty Mouse, more recently, Figueiredo, Brandon Moreno, Wiley Zhang, Yuri Prohatska, you know, all these champions are coming to him to seek advice, to seek coaching. And so that just says something about his fight IQ and his ability to coach and advise these fighters. I think mentally he's very much a part of the game still. And physically, you know, he looks like it. He's in great shape. He looks like better shape than when he was in his 20s, actually. So I don't think ring rust is going to be a factor. It's just going to be a matter of who's the better fighter. That being said, if Aljo beats Cejudo, I don't want to hear any excuses saying, "Oh, he beat a washed Cejudo" or anything. Nah. Cejudo is the one of the goats. He's not really in that consideration ever. I think just being part of the lower weight classes, not really getting too much attention, maybe because he's cringe. But when you look at his resume, the other, you know, smaller weight goats, Dominic Cruz, Mighty Mouse, TJ Dillashaw, you know, when you stack up that many wins against that many of your contemporaries, you know, what else more can you say? Henry Cejudo's the best at these weight classes. Aljamain Sterling, you know, he's got a tall task ahead of him. He's got maybe some of the best like submission grappling in this weight class. Um, and so, yeah, his wrestling on paper is nowhere near Henry Cejudo's, right? But he doesn't have to have these single legs and double legs and take Henry Cejudo down. All he has to do is expose Cejudo's back, and then you know he could ride that backpack position better than anybody. Maybe second to Damian Maya, but you know we've seen time and time again if Aljo gets to your back, you're in for a long night. These are the rounds that Sterling can win. Is the rounds that he gets to Cejudo's back. Now with Cejudo's distance management, I don't think that's going to be very easy. So stylistically, this is a very interesting match. How much of a grappling match can Sterling make it, and how successful is he going to be if it does become a grappling match? One thing that kind of worries me about Sterling is if you look at his last loss, his last and his only time that he's ever been finished against Marlon Moraes, it was stepping in with that level change, going for a takedown, not really setting it up, and he pays for it, right? He gets kneed in the head, and it's a devastating KO. If you look at Cejudo's last fight, it's kind of very similar, right? Like he's fighting Dominic Cruz. Dominic Cruz has this herky jerky motion that's worked really well for him over the years, but Cejudo was able to time it. So as Dominic Cruz is hitting that level change, and you don't know if it's going to be an overhand right or if it's going to be a takedown attempt. Either way, Cejudo throws that kick, lands the knee instead. To Dominic Cruz, and it's the same story as Sterling. You know, they lost by knockout, by TKO. So they say styles make fights. If Sterling comes in with that same style that he did against Moraes, but really a lot of his opponents, you know, those level changes, you don't know if it's an overhand or a takedown. And if Cejudo's timing is there, you know, and he catches him, it could be a short night for Sterling, actually. So it was a very, very interesting fight to me. I'm leaning towards Cejudo just because, I mean, I think he's the GOAT. And when GOATs come back after a long layoff, they're still winning, you know. GSP, John Jones, Randy Couture back in the day. I think Cejudo is of that ilk. He's proven it before, and I believe this weekend he'll prove it again. All right, let's go on to the next one. Bilal Muhammad versus Gilbert Burns. I'll take this picture out for a little bit so you can see my face. But this is a short notice fight. If you guys remember, it's supposed to be a lightweight fight, probably a title eliminator. Charles Oliveira versus Benil Dariush, and that fight fell through. Hopefully they can rebook it. But in the meantime, we've got Bilal Muhammad versus Gilbert Burns. Kind of a weird situation because Gilbert Burns fought not too long ago. So they're, you know, sliding him right back in there. This is probably for a title eliminator. So whoever wins this probably gets a title fight. No guarantees, but it's looking that way. And to have a title eliminator on what, like 2 weeks notice, that's unprecedented in a way. But talking about the styles, you know, I got to go with Bilal for this. Obviously, Gilbert Burns is a very solid fighter. He's fought for the title. He looked great in his last fight, and he's kind of a staple of the welterweight division at this point. My question is, how are these weight cuts affecting him back to back, about 2 weeks apart? I know he's always made weight, but it's not an easy task for him. And physically, what can that do to you? How does that affect your gas tank? How does it affect your chin? We've seen him wobbled before, even TKO'd. Bilal Muhammad, you don't think of him as a nasty striker. He's more of like a grinder, a grappler, and makes it dirty. But in his last fight against Sean Brady, he looked phenomenal standing. So I think he's really coming into his own. He's really showing the levels that he's kind of improving at in the striking and also in the grappling. Like his ability to hold people down is getting, you know, a lot better. Now, will that be effective against Gilbert Burns? I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards it being more of a striking battle, and in the grappling exchanges, probably just against the cage, because as as good and tough as Bilal Muhammad is, I don't think he wants to be playing jujitsu with Gilbert Burns. Um, he's a former champion in Titan FC. He's also defended it, and when you have that belt in your you know, under your belt, so to speak, you know, you come in with a different mentality, and I think he's coming in with a chip on his shoulder. You know, he's one of those guys that have been stacking wins, and isn't getting talked about in a title fight, really. So he has that chip on his shoulder. I think he's hungrier, and that's gonna prove very important in this kind of fight where it's very grinding and it's 5 rounds, and you kind of see who wants it more. I know there could be a more technical breakdown of the fight, but I feel like with their styles and their grappling and how gritty it's going to be, sometimes it just comes down to that: who has got the better cardio, who wants it a little bit more. Um, and I think that's Bilal Muhammad for this one. On to the next one. We got Jessica Andrade versus Yan Xiaonan. Jessica Andrade, former champion as well, and in the UFC. So I think a lot of the times that she wins, she's a lot stronger than the girls. She's got knockout power and decent enough ability to land those shots. The thing is, I think at this point she's a little bit one note, She's looking for those hooks, for those strong power punches. And against someone like Yan Xiaonan, who has, I think, a really good movement and ability to stay out and kind of like point fight. She doesn't have the best submissions. She doesn't have the best like TKOs or KOs, knockout power, but she knows how to win rounds through volume and moving enough to not really get devastatingly finished. She's only been finished once, and it wasn't from like a one punch KO that maybe Jessica Andrade wants to land. It's from getting positionally dominated by the former champ Valentina Shevchenko. No, not who was it? Carla Esparza. That's it. The former champ Carla Esparza. So if you could positionally dominate her like through the grappling, Jessica Andrade, that is, maybe she can get it done. But other than that, if she's standing with Yan Xiaonan, I think Xiaonan just has enough elusiveness to stay out of those power punches and pick her apart across 3 rounds. I'm going with Yan Xiaonan. Next up, we've got Movsar Evloev. I think that's pretty good. I got pretty close. Diego Lopez, UFC debutant. He's filling in for Bryce Mitchell. I want to say Movsar. I think he was a late notice replacement for Bryce Mitchell too. So both of these guys are stepping up on short notice to fight. And in my opinion, Bryce Mitchell kind of dodged a bullet. I know he had to pull out due to injury, which is unfortunate, but I think he kind of dodged, luckily, Movsar in this fight, because he is a very talented and, dominating grappler. And while that is Bryce Mitchell's bread and butter, against this guy who's undefeated, Bryce Mitchell coming off of his first loss, he got beat up everywhere by Topuria. This is a really tough fight to come back to. And for those reasons, I think Movsar, he's just going to still win against Diego Lopez, who, there's not too much tape that I could find on him. Like I said, UFC debut. I'm just going to go with a guy who's at least been training for this fight a little bit longer and is undefeated and getting ready for a really tough fight in Bryce Mitchell. So not much to say of that. I'm excited to see some good MMA, some good MMA grappling, and just enjoy that. Speaking of MMA grappling, we got the return of Kron Gracie. A lot of people are talking about the return of Henry Cejudo. Kron Gracie has been away from the sport even longer than Cejudo. So how does ring rust affect Kron Gracie? I think very differently than Cejudo. Like I mentioned before, Cejudo, he's been active in all these fight camps. So mentally and a little bit physically, he's still been in the sport. Kron Gracie, he kind of keeps a low profile. That's just how he goes. We don't really know how much he's been training. From what I've seen, he's no longer on the West Coast. I could be wrong about that, but he used to do his camps with the Diaz Bros, and I think they would help him a lot with his boxing and his stand-up. Where is he getting ready for this fight? I'm not sure, but if he's only marginally better or if he looks the same as his last fight against Cub Swanson, I don't think this is going to be a very fun night for him. Crone has probably the best jiu-jitsu in MMA. I know I say that quite a bit, but I mean, Crone's making the comeback, so now he's back in that discussion. 2013 ADCC champion, won all of his matches by submission against another champion, JT Torres, and silver medalist Gary Tonin, amongst others. So like he's got really good jujitsu and really good submissions. The problem is this is not jujitsu, this is MMA, and if you don't have a way to take it down to the ground and force the jujitsu, you're kind of shit out of luck. In his last fight, I didn't really like his strategy. I don't know what him or his team was thinking. I know they thought that they won the fight, but he got battered by Cub Swanson, on the feet, and he didn't attempt a single takedown until the third round. And let me tell you, like his jiu-jitsu is so good that yeah, his wrestling isn't where it should be, but if he pulls guard like he's done, many times before, I think he would do just fine. He wouldn't take much damage. He'd probably set up a submission. And if you look at his stats, 100% finish rate in his wins, why wouldn't you just pull guard? So I don't know what was going through his head, like to me, it kind of showed low fight IQ, which I hate to say because I always love to root for the jujitsu guy. But, if you're getting battered, honestly, even sit to your butt if you have to, and sit guard, pull guard, whatever you have to do. Like, don't just stand there and get battered. Charles Jourdain is that guy that could batter him, similar to how Cub Swanson did. I think Jordan has got great striking, so if he could pick his shots wisely, maybe use more of your hands, which is where he's gotten most of his finishes anyway, instead of your kicks and your knees, unless you disguise it and set it up really well. Don't give Crone any chance to get a takedown. That being said, I want Crone to win. I love to see jiu-jitsu guys succeed, and he's kind of like a throwback to the old school Gracie's, the way he strikes. I think today, even at 145, if we were to go back and find UFC 1, he would clean up, right? He would win that easy peasy, but this is not UFC 1. This is Charles Jourdain. He's a complete mixed martial artist, and provided again he could keep it standing and pick his shots, this will be a tough night for Crone Gracie. So I hope he pulls guard. I hope he can give us like a jiu-jitsu spectacle. Lately, a lot of these title fights have come down to jujitsu and submission. So maybe he saw that, and that's the reason he's coming back, and he wants to show like jujitsu's making a comeback. It's my time. So that'd be cool, just as a jujitsu fan, to see. That finishes up our main card. And let me actually cut to some of our picks. So Alex wasn't here to talk about his picks, but he actually shared them with me. So right here, you'll see in the main event, Alex has picked Sterling. I'm going with Cejudo. In the co-main, we're picking the same guy, Bilal Muhammad, Chicago, represent. And following that, Jessica Andrade. He's going with the former champion, Andrade. I'm going with my fellow Asian woman, Yan Xiaonan. Looks like we're both picking Avloev. It's hard to pick a UFC debut dude. You don't know too much about him. He's coming up on short notice. On top of that, Avliev's just a monster. I'm not surprised we both picked him. And in the main event, I know Alex is saying that I have no heart for picking against a jiu-jitsu guy, but hey, I'm rooting for him, so that has to count for something. I'm rooting for Crone. Alex is picking Crone. I'm picking Jourdain. That rounds out our picks. So make sure that you like and subscribe, and go ahead and enjoy those fights this weekend. Ciao.